Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditam Astu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us. May we work together with great energy and enthusiasm. May our study be illumined. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Included in that, of course, maybe not unnecessary cavil as well. Very often, you'll see that there is a lot of academic disagreement among people taking a debating stance. But in our study, we have to use not only convincing arguments within the principles, but also, is it practical? Does it ring true? So we're studying the Katha Upanishad, and last week we were talking about discrimination, discernment, two paths being laid out, indicating that we have a free choice, but the free choice has to be based on something deep and foundational. Any choice that you make has got to have sufficient information. That information is contained in Scripture. Because if we go according to our normal biological responses, we get into trouble. Just to remind you, two choices are there. What is called preferable and pleasurable. Both are binding. What we call good, what we call bad. It's preferable to go along the good, but this is not good in the ordinary sense. This is not good in terms of what will give me the best sensation. What is good in this sense is not even moral good. Moral good leads us to a certain position that transcends both good and evil and presents us with a transcendent joy. So that what is deemed to be morally good, what is deemed to be preferable, may not necessarily, obviously, be pleasurable or joyful, but in its end it is. And what we're aiming to do is transcend that whole position, because there's a difference between mere joy and sublime bliss. That's what we're headed for. So just to give you that brief, and then the second chapter of this Katha Upanishad is presented to us. We can take it up from the 12th stanza, and there it's pointed out to us that the wise renounce joy and sorrow, the intelligent. It's put in this way: Adhyatma yogadi kamena divam matva dhiro harsha shokao jahati. That is, that those who are more intelligent, that is, those who use their discerning faculty and choose the right way, they give up both happiness and sorrow together, both. Now, most people are looking for happiness, but happiness and sorrow is the obverse and reverse of the same coin. You can't really have one without the other. And that is the path of the pleasurable. We take this universe to be of face value, and everybody wants goodness everywhere, and everyone wants happiness. Happiness is the key drive, unending happiness. But when we pursue it, we see that it is not a lasting thing. So it's like a wave that has a peak, followed by a hollow, followed by a peak and hollow. And we continue using this formula. We have a psychological inbuilt drive within us, biologically driven, that wants us to pursue happiness from the external things that we observe and see. And it is intrinsically selfish because we're not concerned necessarily about the happiness of others. When we take others into consideration, then it becomes the preferable path. So seeing this and seeing that we want to be more intelligent than mere animals, we develop concentration. Concentration is the means to overcome this. So in answer to any question, how do we overcome this duality of behavior? We can say here the formula is concentrate the mind. On what? On something that is called the self. That is a fundamental substratum within us that never comes, never goes, remains as a witness, also a knower and a thinker. And from Tuesday's talk, we say the witness is also an enjoyer. So concentration, what is that? It is taking up a theme and running with it to the point where there's a unity. Only one thought is there, like oil being poured from a vessel flowing smoothly without a break from one vessel to another. That then is called meditation. And meditating on what? It's described as, see, Puranam means ancient, the old deity who is inscrutable. It's not obvious. And we can't find out what it is. We can't put it in a test tube and see is it alkaline or acid. It's beyond our scope of normal understanding. Incomprehensible. And why is that? Because it's lodged seemingly, inaccessibly, and located in the intellect. We get our freedom when we get this enlightenment, that is, enlightened intellect. Gautama Siddhartha became a Buddha. That is one of enlightened intellect, enlightened buddhi. And it is seated in the midst of misery. It may seem a pessimistic position, but when you analyze this life, you find it's all full of turmoil, net result, misery. And we're trying to get out of it. So when we talk about freedom, it's freedom from this misery, freedom from pain. The intelligent person realizes it and decides to reform their life in that direction. So there's a wonderful commentary, Shankaracharya's commentary is put here, breaking down each of these terms. Sotam, him, the self that you want to know, which is dudarsham, hard to see. You can't see it with the eyes, you can't hear it with the ears. It's hard to detect. We shouldn't give up as a result. Is there an example for that? Yes. So Sri Ramakrishna gives us an example. The stars are out, whether it's day or night, but you can't see them in the day. That doesn't mean to say they don't exist. So somebody who knows it, who studies astronomy, cosmology and so on, will understand the stars are still present, obscured by the short wavelengths of the blue sky. You look up in the sky, you can't see the stars. Sometimes you can see the moon in the day, that is the sun directing its beam directly on the moon. At certain times of the day you can see that. But the stars you won't see. So difficult to see because of its extreme subtleness. That is why we need a systematic process of discovering it. So it is lodged inaccessibly, gutam, anu pranavistam, hidden by knowledge that changes in accordance with worldly objects. When we see, all these objects without any proper observation, we will overlook this fact. For example, a mere tree. Do you ever wonder how is it that such a thing can stand with its arms outstretched? You and I can't do it. Defying gravity, such a bulky thing, and holding its arms up, and all originating from a seed, some life principle is within it, some antaryaman is technical term, some inner control is in there, weaving the tree around itself. Did we notice it? Ordinarily, no. When we introduce it into our concentration, our meditation, and inquire, what is the nature of a tree or nature of any object? Progressively we go back to more and more subtle areas until we see, what we call tree is actually this entity standing there, looking like a tree, no doubt. So hidden by knowledge that changes and so on, because it is perceived there, and Gaharestam existing in the midst of misery in the body and the senses, which are the source of many miseries. Why is life miserable? Because all our consciousness, which is our birthright, is flowing outward through the senses toward the objects. Is there a way that we can stay that and put it in a poised position? As soon as we do that, all our sorrow is gone. Is there a systematic technique of doing that? Concentration is doing it. So hence it's hard to see, because it's in the middle of all that. We can't see the forest for the trees is the expression. And then when we react with a certain element of anger. Now there's a funny example of what the effect of anger is doing and how hollow it is and how damaging it is. It's like somebody who decides that somebody else is my enemy, so I'll pick up hot coals and throw it at them. And it doesn't reach them. The only person that gets damaged is the thrower's hand. The hot coals burn his skin and hand. So you can see this. I heard an funny example of that the other day. Somebody describing road rage. We sit in a car and all our frustration from previously, from all kinds of incidents, emerges in road rage because people know they can't hear us. Somehow, peculiarly, we shout at the other car, thinking the car will hear us. And the person inside will hear us. No, they won't. So it all comes back to you. The only person you're damaging is yourself. Psychologists have this peculiar idea that if you want to get rid of anger, express it. As long as you don't harm anybody, go out in the garden and furiously dig, curse and swear. And maybe dig so vigorously, you might dig up an old school friend, maybe, I don't know. But there is damage. You're damaging yourself. That's the only person you're damaging. Because you're making an endorsement in your habit level and increasing your unconscious habit of anger. So yes, it's damaging. You may not be damaging somebody else, but you'll always be damaging yourself. So you are in the midst of all this jungle of misery, and inside that is the subtle element, undetected and undetectable in normal ways. Hence it is hard to see. So Muttva, meditating on that Puranam, that old, that ancient, everlasting one, that deity that has always been there. And this is a wonderful definition within Sankhya, actually not Sankhya, yoga, because Sankhya has no God like that. But certainly is there described Ishvara. You personalize it as Ishvara, not in a normal sense of a God, but an ancient teacher somewhere, somebody that knows everything. When you know something, it presents a limitation. And beyond that border will be more knowledge, until you get to a supreme knower that knows everything. This is described as Ishvara in the yogic philosophy. So that's the ancient one, ancient deity. One that is before time, before space, before any of these difficulties, all of this intricate construction of complexity. Some simple entity, the most profound simplicity standing there, that is this deity called Adhyatmaya Gati Gamena, is the self, but concentration of the mind on that self. After withdrawing it from the outer objects, that's what's necessary. This is called Adhyatma Yoga, the attainment of that is what it's called. So the intelligent person, Dhiraha, that person who has some access to wisdom, understanding the inner nature of things, going from the outside, not paying any attention to the external things, decides to enter into their inner self, make an inner exploration. Then what happens? Then they give up. By itself, they give up. It happens automatically, without a struggle. Jahati gives up both happiness and sorrow, wants to transcend both of them. Happiness and sorrow are the plus and minus of the whole universe. The whole universe is constructed of these pairs of opposites. Otherwise, it doesn't work. You have to have evil in order to enhance and signify and highlight what is good. Without that contrast, we have no idea. Since there is no excellence or deterioration for the self, self never deteriorates, it is always there. Understanding that, we'll pursue that direction. So then, after hearing this, grasping it fully, separating this righteous thing from the body, and attaining this subtle thing, like taking a stalk away from a plant, making that kind of discernment, making that kind of discriminating separation, which is normally mixed up with the medium for sorrow, namely the body and mind. And attaining their subtle thing, that mortal, subject to birth, life, and death, rejoices. It goes beyond mere happiness. Rejoice has some kind of internal shift, some kind of internal rapture, some access to bliss, way beyond mere happiness. For he has obtained that which is the cause of delight. The cause of delight is that. The cause of delight is not the external objects, because that is not perpetually delightful. It brings also the sorrow with it. Then he says, I consider that the mansion of Brahman is wide open to somebody like Nachiketa, who has the faith, who has this capacity to discriminate and make the right choice, and is open to being taught. That is, doesn't have an ego that says, I know it, or an ego that says, I don't want to know it. I'm happy where I am. And that was all tested out in the previous stanzas. So Nachiketa, is interpretation, various interpretations, but anyway said, if I am fit and you too, sir, are pleased with me, then let us proceed, of course, in this inquiry. Then an interesting question arises. Very, very interesting question. It is put like this. Anyatra dharmad, anyatra dharmad, anyatra smat, kruta krutat, anyatra bhutacha, bhavyacha, yattat, pashyasi, tadvada. Very interesting question comes up. Tell me, please, of that thing which you see as different from virtue, different from vice, different from this cause and effect, and different from the past and the future. All our activity is orientated toward the past or the future. And when we struggle in moral life, we want to do away or draw a line from the past and make a better future. That's all within a time framework. In the beginning of spiritual life, we think that we have to do something better. We have to resist evil, and we have to now engage on some moral virtues. And while that is true, it's contained within a certain mindset that says, I will achieve something, some goal orientation. Something will happen to me in the future that will give me a freedom. That's okay in the beginning, but at some point we have to ask this question. Is there something that is different from even virtue and vice, from good and evil? In other words, from any expectation that leading a good life will produce something. And is there something different from a causal law? If I do something here, I'll get some effect there. I'll get some fruit of some activity that brings in a motive somewhere. Is there something that's transcending that, that is outside the framework of time itself, and that has no causal connection whereby if I do this, I get that? Different from the past, different from the future, a timeless entity. Is there something like that? What is that? It seems to me that that is worthwhile pursuing. That's the question. That which you see as other than righteousness. So we are emphasizing dharma, something independent of dharma and adharma. So the commentary goes like this. Yatra dharmat, different from virtue, that is from the performance of scriptural duties. We do something along scriptural lines in order to get some result for ourselves, such as heaven. Their results and their accessories. I do this because somebody said I should do it. It is within a doctrinal framework, or it is the law. Is there something different from that? The term dharma has all these implications. The term dharma is constructed from a root that means that thing which holds everything together. Like if you knit something and one thread is loose, the whole thing could unravel. So the thing that is binding and holding something, that is called dharma. It suggests a harmony, the thing that keeps things together in harmony. And so for that reason, you can apply it and interpret it as moral religion or law. When you say sanatana dharma, you're saying that law, that eternal thing that holds together something, and it has to be a constant law that is eternal. Is there something like that? And is there something opposite to it? Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita is telling from age to age he comes whenever there is adharma. But Krishna is clearly different from it. So there are no bad people. There are only bad behaviors. But what is the actual essential person? If we are able to notice that, will we now bypass any judgments? So different from vice. So also, anyatra asmat krita kritat, different from this krita, this effect, and akrita, the cause. Moreover, anyatra bhutat cha bhavyat cha, different from what was or will be, and also what is, that is, what is not limited by these three aspects of time, past, present, and future. Anything like that. The thing of this kind that is beyond the reach of all empirical experience. All empirical experience will have to be defined as subject to a causal relationship, subject to time and subject to space. Which Pashyasi, you see, you know. Is there a thing that you know? Please tell me. And so, commentary goes on, with a view to speaking of the thing asked for, as also some other attributes. Death said to him who had inquired thus, that's the next passage. He's going to say, I'm going to tell you, but I'm going to tell you briefly of that goal, because if you describe a goal, it has to be brief, isn't it? A process of it is more complex, but the goal should be quite simple. And what is that goal? You can't arbitrarily put something in. You have to refer to some reliable scriptural text, what the ancient people experienced. This is called the Vedas, the scripture. So, which all the Vedas with one voice propound. They're all in agreement, therefore it's all true. Which all the austerities speak and wishing, for which people practice something. What is it? Self-control, brahmacharya. Now, brahmacharya is put in different contexts. Brahmacharya is put in the context of studentship or lifelong self-control, you can put in that way. So the goal is the original, which may mean, of course, a goal or even a state. So, and it's about to put out the goal as either a state of being or a word, a sound. And now we come down to what is that goal? And that goal is put here and also elsewhere in the Upanishads as Om. This aspect of studentship, all of us are students. With a sense of fun, you could easily put on a visa application, occupation, student. We're all learning in life, isn't it? So, but there has to be some kind of purifying aspect within the mind that makes one receptive to truth. And all of this spiritual practice, whatever it is, ultimately summarized as self-control, controlling of the two primary biological directives. One is continuing the original creation, propagating the species. Every organic thing has that drive, even a bacteria has that drive. And the second thing, the will to sustain yourself through that reproduction, but also by eating and drinking, by sustaining your own life. This happens way down to the most fundamental atomic level. There's a game being played where the electron wants to buzz and doesn't want to fall into a proton and keeps the game going. Their will to live, a will to sustain oneself energetically. Supposing we are, through self-systematic discipline, able to transcend these things, both dharma and adharma, how will we do it? So what is this goal by which people, for the reason people practice this discipline, continence, self-discipline, controlling lust, controlling greed? What is the goal they're aiming for? And is it bound by time or by causation? So this goal is described as Om. Om embraces every aspect of the Supreme that you can think of. It's a comprehensive goal, all-comprehensive goal. It encompasses the idea of a transcendent entity from the human point of view, imposing some kind of relationship on it. Brahman imposed upon it. Or it can be put as a means toward the goal. Or it can be put as the actual goal that transcends everything. All of this is contained in this one sound symbol, Om. Let us read the commentary that Shankaracharya puts out. Yat Padam, that attainable thing, the goal, which Sarva Vedaha, all the Vedas without divergence, Amananti propound, cha, and yet that which Sarvani, Tapamsi, all the austerities, Vedanti they speak of, these are meant for the attainment of yat ichantaha, wishing for which they practice charanti. They practice what? Brahmacharyam. Brahmacharya, that consists either in residence for study, ordinary student, in the house of the teacher, or is of some other kind. In the ancient days, all the education from 12 onwards, secondary and tertiary education, was not in an institution such as a university or something like that, or a hostel. People lived in a hostel and so on. No, it was in the house of a teacher. And why should that Gurukulam system? Why is that? It's because the relationship between the teacher is not somebody that is distributing information. Somebody who is interested in your personal growth. Somebody who has the moral supreme and superior position of saying that I see something special in you, not only the foundation in you that we call Atman or the self, but I also see your potential in terms of your skills, your attributes, and your abilities. I want to try and bring it out from you. It's a kind of elaboration of Swami Vivekananda's. Each soul is potentially divine. The goal is to manifest that from within, but also all your potential. Try to achieve your highest potential in an environment conducive to it, where we will lovingly look after you and teach you how to build your character, as well as understand how to be a good citizen and also how to employ your skills. Give you practical knowledge in an environment that emphasizes character building. This was the emphasis placed in terms of education that Swami Vivekananda gave. Education is not 1 + 1, stuffing your head full of information. No, it's to do with character building, giving you the skills for employment in the world, engaging all your talents and abilities, but also living like the highest moral good citizen. The Untitled Upanishad is full of exhortations to the departing student. How will you sustain the whole atmosphere that you have lived in for some 12 years and be useful in the world? So that it means inherently good studentship is also leading the highest, noblest life you can think of, full of discipline. You don't abandon the discipline after your training. You keep it up. So it consists not only of residence in the house of the teacher, or is of some other kind. You can determine to go. Lifelong celibacy would be there, monastic life. So I can tell you, samgrahena, in brief, that thing, that goal, om iti etat, is this om. The goal that you desire to know is this, that is indicated by the word om, and that has om as its symbol. It is well known, says the subsidiary commentary, that the thing that is revealed, that is flashes in the mind on the utterance of a word, is signified by that word. Every word has a corresponding concept. When you say Om, it must mean something. Patanjali Yoga Sutras tells us that one way of concentrating the mind is the repetition of the sound symbol of Ishvara, that eternal teacher. His manifesting sound is Om, and the way is repetition of it and meditating on its meaning. Just repetition of it is not sufficient. You have to understand, what does it mean? Because every word carries a corresponding concept. The subtle version of that sound is replayed in the mind. It's called nama. The actual rupa, the form, is the audial form. Let us say, for example, supposing I say elephant, then an elephant forms in your mind. A full representational picture is reproduced. It's not that you stuff a whole elephant into your head. Not possible. So every word has this corresponding form, which is subtle. It's called nama, the combination nama-rupa. Subtle form is that. Even subtler than that is the actuality of it. So on the utterance of a word is signified in that word, and thus the knowledge untouched by outer objects that reveals itself to the man of concentrated mind on the utterance of the word Om. By repeating the word Om, it manifests itself. It is also dependent on and signified by Om. So therefore it can be a means. One should meditate thus: I am Brahman, as signaled by Om, and as conditioned by Maya, that is this causality. Conditioned by Maya, in which the sattva quality predominates. By repeating it with a sense of purity of mind and inner meaning, it purifies the mind. If, however, one is not able to do so, one should superimpose the idea of Brahman. That means we can use it in a personalized way. From a beginner's point of view, think of what that represents in whatever way you can think of it and relate to it, and then worship that. So it encompasses the worshipper, thinking of it also as a technique and a means, and signifying the actuality in its transcendent position. This Om represents, and the next one will tell it more clearly, it represents cosmic mind. So we'll come to that stanza shortly. The middle ones, the best minds can think of Brahman without Om, without that means. Catch it directly. That is the silence followed by the repetition of Om. And here we have to refer to Untitled Upanishad, whose 12 stanzas refer only to the subject Om, saying that these 3 syllables that make it up represent waking state, normal state of objectivity, the dream, where it's reproduced in subtle form, and there cosmic mind dominates, and the last one, a dreamless sleep, but the silence that follows is that entity which transcends Om itself, the sound symbol. And the middle ones can meditate on Brahman with the help of Om, and the inferior ones can worship Brahman on the symbol Om. So it caters for every single aspect, every single taste. All right, so then let us go on to the next stanza. Now, before we do that, let us also just elaborate. Om is called Shabda Brahman. So there's no distinction between Brahman that does not manifest and the manifest version is there as sound, Shabda Brahman. In other words, the first vibration, it's the only phonetic symbol of Brahman. And Swami Vivekananda in his lectures will explain in great detail the position of the tongue to express this, how it would be universally representative of this highest principle by virtue of the fact that it represents every single sound, every single linguistic expression, putting the tongue in every part of the mouth, moving it forward, And therefore, it makes it a universal sound symbol of this highest. Because the word God comes with baggage. It can mean anything for anybody. But Om describes everything regardless, however you view it. So in it is the rudiment of all sounds. And as there can be no idea or thought without a corresponding name, word, or sound, sound is considered as inseparably associated with the ideation, but it manifests otherwise. And the idea of Brahman manifests without even that. And the idea of Brahman, if it could be formed at all, is infinitely all-comprehensive, and so must also be its sound symbol or its counterpart. So just to elaborate, as I mentioned, Om consists of three primary sounds, A, U, and A would be the first of the guttural sounds. So it is the very first sound that man can utter. And it's the last of the labial sounds is And then in between is the sound produced by rolling the wind over the whole of the tongue. And hence the conjunction of these three primary sounds can be, this is Swami Vivekananda talking, comprehended to contain the rudiment of all sounds that man can ever give utterance to. So it can be taken as the fittest sound symbol of Brahman. This is the purport of Swami Vivekananda's explanation. All right. So let us now see. The syllable is Brahman. Let us go from there. Itad hi ivaksharam brahma, itad hi ivaksharam param. Itad hi ivaksharam nyatvayo yad ichchati tasyatat. This letter Om, indeed, is the lesser Brahman. Of course, the English translation goes inferior, but that gives us a kind of maybe distorted view of this. It's not that it is less important. It's not that it is in any way inferior in a class sense. This person is inferior to that person, not like that. We can say lesser is an inferior Brahman, in other words, more manifest. And that is called Hiranyagarbha. Hiranya, golden, Garbha, a womb. It is the origin and creative womb and origin of all beings. It is cosmic mind. It is that aspect from which all created entities come, mythologically called Brahma, not Brahman, Brahma, like that. And this letter, that is this sound symbol, is indeed the supreme Brahman also. You can't divorce the two. It's not that there are two gods. It's not that there is Brahman, unmanifest, and Brahman manifest, and one is superior, one is inferior, not in that sense. But in the sense that not tainted by anything, superior to that extent. The other one, manifest, becomes a series of vibrations that we interpret as this world, a series of waves. Modern science has discovered this in the terms of oscillation. Everything is oscillating. You can call it waves, an oscillation of waves. Having at our point of viewing, our interpretation, having frequency, having amplitude, and all of those kinds of things. But in its subtle form, much less, to be undetected. All of this comes from cosmic mind, one broadcasting station. So I mentioned the other day, see, it's not that if you tune into a radio station 1,000 people in the neighborhood tune into the same station. It's not that there are 1,000 broadcasting stations or 1,000 broadcasts. One broadcast, 1,000 tuning mechanisms into the same thing. That is called cosmic mind. Thy will be done is the Christian expression, Jesus' expression of tuning the individual will, the individual intellect, into the cosmic intellect, cosmic buddhi. And this letter is indeed the supreme Brahman. There's no difference. Anybody who, while meditating on this letter, wants any of the two, to him it comes. So, let us read the commentary. So here, of course, Om is spoken of as Brahman itself. It is the symbol of Brahman. In case you're confused or for first timers, the expression Brahman is a supreme principle. If we say, you see, it's a series of pluses. Vedanta takes a position not of going from error to truth, but from going from truth to higher truth. A materialist will say, this world exists, that's all there is. You say this world does exist, it does seem to exist, but there is more. And then you go to the idealist position saying there's mind. Mind is productive of matter. Yes, it does seem to be true, there is mind, yes, but there's more. There's an intellect. Yes, there's more. There's a God. Yes, there's more. Personal God. Yes, we call it cosmic mind, but there's more. There is the impersonal God with attributes, not necessarily forms, yes, but there's more. Oh, what is more? There's a supreme transcendent principle that chooses to manifest through what we call vivarta, apparitional causation, and it produces this. We call it Maya. It produces this. You can't exclude any one factor. It's the same thing looked through different lenses. That's all. So, etat eva aksharam brahma, this letter Om, or this sound symbol Om, indeed is the inferior, but not from a class point of view, Brahman, Hiranyagarbha. It is that same entity plus what we call parties, adapters. So that Brahman plus a mind, a cosmic mind, manifesting in that way, channeling itself, as it were, in that way. So this is Hiranyagarbha, and Itat eva aksharam param. This sound symbol is the supreme Brahman also. There's no distinction. For them, both this letter Om is the symbol, because when you keep quiet, that's the supreme. Nyatva, while worshipping, that is Itat eva aksharam, this very letter Om as Brahman, it doesn't exclude personal worship. It's all-inclusive formula. Anything that, whether the supreme or the less Brahman, anybody, ichati, wishes for, tatasya, that becomes his. The principle anyway in meditation, whatever you meditate on comes to you. You want to meditate on this as a personal God, it comes to you. You want to meditate on cosmic mind, it comes to you. You want to meditate on that supreme impersonal principle that has no form, that formless entity, it comes to you. So that becomes his. If it is the supreme Brahman that he desires, it becomes noble. If it is the inferior Brahman, it becomes attainable. So there's no distinction then. The expression, the goal is to have a vision of God, becomes as valid as to say, to attain the truth and to get your freedom, supposed freedom. Don't forget, what is that which is different from time? Is different from cause and effect. I want to go and get my freedom. The starting position, a natural starting position, assuming time, assuming causation, not understanding that you're free already. You just have to uncover that freedom through these particular mechanisms. This medium is the best. This Om is the best. This medium is the supreme. It is both the inferior and superior. It represents the entirety of Brahman. Meditating on this medium, one becomes adorable in the world of Brahman. Commentary is like this. Since this is so, therefore, among all the mediums, now we say that all mantras resolve themselves into the Gayatri, and Gayatri resolves itself into this Pranava, into this Om, and then from there that resolves itself into the highest Brahman. So, among all the mediums, for example, Gayatri, for the attainment of Brahman, this medium is Shreshtam, the highest, the most praiseworthy. That is why this sound symbol is at the head of every single mantra. Etat alambanam, this medium, this is the supreme Brahman, as well as the inferior Brahman, since it relates to both inferior and also supreme. Yatta, meditating on that, this medium, one is worshipped in the world of Brahman because nearness becomes oneness. When you reflect Brahman, when you saturate the mind with that, then you look and feel as if you're that. A unity of identification is taken up. The idea is this: getting identified with the Supreme Brahman or the inferior Brahman from the process of meditation, he becomes adorable like Brahman because it becomes reflected. Jesus said, you cannot put your light, hide your light under a bushel or a bed. Your very face will shine with it. Every pore of the skin will be, in a sense, luminous. This is a secret behind the sacred art, universally accepted, whether it's Buddhism, whether it's Hinduism, or whether it is Ali, who is the caliph acknowledged by the Shiite Muslims, or whether it is the Christians. You see, all the art presents a kind of halo around the head. A kind of luminosity is there, characteristic of sainthood. So it goes on for those aspirants of medium and inferior quality. Om has been indicated both as a medium for meditation on and a symbol for worship of the self which is devoid of all attributes and which was inquired about in this original question. Tell me of that thing which you see as different from virtue and all that, which we have read. And it has also been presented similarly for similar aspirants, you and me and everybody else, who wish to know even this inferior Brahman called cosmic mind. So now, this verse is being said with a view to ascertaining directly the nature of that self, which has the Om as its meaning. So it goes on like this. Viparshit, the intelligent one, that is the intelligent self. That is the self behind all consciousness, all conscious expression, is neither born nor does it die. Therefore, the question of reincarnation doesn't come out, because that never reincarnates. It never incarnates, it never reincarnates. It was always there. It's neither born nor does it die. It did not originate from anything. And nothing originated from it. It is birthless, eternal, undecaying, and ancient. It is not injured even when the body is killed. So if we're able to convince ourselves of this fact, and here, of course, we find echoes in the Bhagavad Gita. Same thing, same passages come out. So if we get used to this idea, a lot of the practical everyday problems disappear for us. We'll come on to that immortality aspect next Saturday. But for the time being, we'll leave it at that. You have quite a bit to digest. You see, the original question that is posed wants to know something practical. Leading a good moral life, that will lead you to a position, no doubt. But what is that transcendent position that overcomes our day-to-day swing between pleasure and pain syndrome? Is there a way we can get out of it? Very clearly it's there. Concentration, meditation, purification of the mind through self-control, and meditating and repeating this useful sound symbol Om that is all-inclusive, a description of Brahman itself. So we leave it there. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.